The Italian leather chair in J.P. Min's executive suite on the 68th floor of the Min Tower in downtown Houston cost more than most people's houses in Texas. JoJo didn't know that when she collapsed into it at 2:47 in the morning. She'd been scrubbing floors for 16 straight hours across 3 different jobs. Her knees screamed, her hands were raw from bleach and industrial cleaner, her eyes burned with an exhaustion so deep it had become its own kind of pain. Just 5 minutes, she told herself. Nobody with that kind of money comes to the office this late anyway. She was wrong. And what he did when he found her would change everything. Right now, before this story consumes you completely, hit that subscribe button and turn on your notifications. Because what you are about to hear is not just a story, it is a warning, a miracle, and a love that will break you before it puts you back together. If you are watching from Houston, from Dallas, from San Antonio, or anywhere across Texas, drop your city in the comments right now. We see you. Now, let's go. At 3:15 in the morning, the private elevator in Min Tower opened with a sound like a whispered threat. J.P. Min stepped out of it. He was 6'2", long dark hair swept back from a face that was all sharp angles and controlled fury. His neck tattoos, black ink dragons, and syndicate markings that climbed from collarbone to jaw were the only visible proof of what he really was beneath that 3-piece charcoal suit. Because to the world of Houston's elite business community, J.P. Min was a self-made billionaire, a real estate titan, a man who had turned a single building into an empire of 50 properties across the South. But in the underground, in the world where money moved without paper trails and power was measured in silence, J.P. Min was the head of the Shinhwa Syndicate, the most feared Korean organized crime network in the entire southern United States. He walked into the darkness of his executive office. The Houston skyline blazed through floor-to-ceiling windows. He reached for the light switch. And there she was, a woman asleep in his chair, behind his desk, wearing a red cleaning uniform that read Morrison Services across the chest. Her natural curly hair was wild and magnificent against the dark leather. Her cleaning cart sat abandoned beside the desk, mops and buckets scattered like she had simply surrendered to gravity somewhere between the window and the door. J.P. Min's jaw clenched so tight that the muscle in his cheek jumped. His head of security, a man named Kang who had been with the syndicate for 11 years, appeared silently at his shoulder. "Sir, I will remove her immediately." "No." Kang blinked. Everyone who worked for J.P. Min understood the depth of his obsessive need for order, for control, for cleanliness. He had fired a senior associate for breathing too loudly during a board meeting. He sanitized his hands with surgical-grade solution 14 times a day. He had once shut down an entire floor of this building because someone left a coffee cup on a windowsill. And now he was looking at a stranger sleeping in his personal chair, as if she were something he had been waiting for. "Let her sleep," J.P. said quietly. "Sir, get me the personal number for Morrison Cleaning Services, the owner's cell." "Yes, I know what time it is. I don't care." He hung up and continued watching her sleep. His dark eyes never left her face. Her chest rose and fell with the deep, heavy rhythm of someone who had not truly rested in a very long time. Something moved through J.P. Min in that moment, something that had no name in his language or in any other. He pulled on a pair of black leather gloves, reached for the long wooden ruler on his desk. He walked toward her slowly, every step precise, every breath measured. He hovered over her sleeping form, and then he tapped her arm with the ruler. "Wake up." JoJo's eyes flew open, and the sound that came out of her was not a scream. It was sharper than that. It was the sound of a woman who had survived enough in her life to know that the first second after a shock is the most dangerous one. She was on her feet before she was fully conscious, one hand braced on the desk, the other raised. She took him in with a single sweeping gaze. The long, dark hair, the tattoos, the gloves, the ruler, the suit. She was a woman who read people the way other people read weather. And what she read in J.P. Min in those first 3 seconds was not danger. It was control masking something much more volatile underneath. "I'm sorry," she said, voice steady. "I fell asleep. It won't happen again." "You fell asleep," JP's voice was winter, in my chair, behind my desk. "Yes." "Do you know how many health codes you just violated?" "Probably several." JoJo reached for her cart. "I'll finish the floor and be gone within." You're fired." JP walked to his desk and reached for his phone. "Morrison is getting my call now." And that was when JoJo did something that surprised even herself. She stepped forward and grabbed his wrist. The effect was immediate and terrifying and beautiful. A current of electricity, warm, shocking, deeply alive, shot through her hand and up her entire arm. Not pain, something far worse than pain, something that felt like recognition. JP pulled back so violently that his elbow struck the edge of the desk and his phone launched into the air, tumbling end over end, and exploded against the marble floor in a sound like a gunshot. Screen shattered, silence. They both stared at it. JP stared at his wrist, not with disgust, with something that looked like astonishment. "That phone," he said quietly, "cost $80,000. JoJo's world tilted. It was custom made, encrypted, one of a kind. JP finally looked up at her and his eyes had changed. Something calculating had replaced the fury. "And you just destroyed it." "I didn't mean to. You will pay for it. I don't have $80,000. Then you will work it off." JP's voice was flat and final, the tone of a man who had never once been told no by the universe. "Starting tonight." What he said next, JoJo could not have anticipated. And neither could you. 3 days earlier, the antiseptic smell of Houston Methodist Hospital hit JoJo like a wall the moment she walked through the sliding doors. She moved through it the same way she moved through everything in her life, fast, focused, head down, no time for feelings she couldn't afford. Her mother, Denise Banks, a woman who had raised JoJo alone on a nurse's assistant salary, who had worked 2 jobs for 20 years without a single complaint, who still pressed her daughter's church clothes with a real iron every Sunday morning, lay in room 412 with tubes in her arms and machines measuring the air going in and out of her lungs. Dr. Reyes met JoJo in the hallway. "The treatment is working," he said, "but we need to move to surgery. The tumor must come out within the week or we lose the window." "How much?" "At least half the total up front. The hospital requires it before scheduling a procedure this complex." He paused. "That's $140,000, Miss Banks." JoJo did not flinch. She had trained herself not to flinch, but her hands, pressed flat against her thighs, curled slowly into fists. "I'll handle it," she said. She walked past him into her mother's room and sat beside the bed and held the hand without the IV lines. And in the silence, she calculated. $12 an hour at the diner, $15 at the downtown office cleaning company, $20 at the airport overnight shift. If she pushed herself, 4 hours of sleep a night, no days off, no luxuries, no breaks, she could maybe clear $2,200 a month after bills. She needed $140,000. By next week. JoJo sat in that hospital room and did not cry. Crying was a luxury. Instead, she opened her phone and started searching. Her best friend Kesha found her in the hospital chapel 40 minutes later. Morrison Services. "Bah," Kesha said before JoJo could speak, sliding into the pew beside her and pushing a coffee into her hands. "My cousin Nadia works for them. They clean every high-rise in the loop downtown. $25 an hour, overtime constantly, because the rich people want their offices cleaned at 2 in the morning. How do I get in?" "I already texted Nadia." Kesha looked at her with the kind of love that doesn't need words. "You're going to get through this, JoJo." "I know," JoJo said, not for comfort. Because she had decided. What neither of them knew, what would not be revealed until much later and would make your blood run cold, was that Kesha had made a second call that night, one that JoJo never heard, one that set everything in motion long before JoJo ever walked into Min Tower. But that comes later. JoJo lasted 13 days on Morrison's regular rotation before the owner, a sweating, cautious man named Mr. Diaz, called her into his office. "You're good," he said. "Fast, thorough, no complaints. I need someone on the min floors, then I'll take it." Mr. Diaz stared at her. He had not finished his sentence. "The min floors," he said carefully, "are floors 60 through 68 of Min Tower. They serve one client, J.P. Min. I've lost 9 people to his standards in the past 6 months. One woman cried when she quit, said she'd rather be homeless. He let that settle. The pay is $30 an hour, plus overtime, plus a 6-month completion bonus. I'll take it." "Miss Banks," Diaz leaned forward, "J.P. Min is not like other clients. He has OCD. He is controlling, obsessive, and ruthless. He will find things wrong that aren't wrong. He will make you feel invisible until he needs you to feel very, very seen." The last woman he dismissed called me crying at 4 in the morning. My mother has stage 4 cancer, Jojo said evenly. Her surgery costs more than I'll earn in 3 years. I need this job, Mr. Diaz. I won't quit and I won't break down. When can I start? Diaz studied her for a long moment. Then he pushed a thick binder across the desk. Tonight. Midnight. Don't be late. Jojo took the binder, stood up, and walked out. She started reading her binder on the bus and memorized 43 pages by the time she reached the tower. What she didn't know, what she couldn't have known, was that J.P. Min had already seen her photograph, had already read her employee file, had specifically requested through a third party that Morrison assign her to his floors. He had been watching her for weeks, and she had no idea. The question that should be sitting in your mind right now is this: why her? Out of every cleaner in Houston, why did J.P. Min want Jojo specifically? Hold that question. The answer will rearrange everything you think you know about this story. By 2:30 in the morning on her first shift, Jojo understood exactly what the binder had been warning her about. The Min floors were not dirty. They were immaculate before she arrived, the kind of clean that existed only in hospitals and laboratories, and the private obsessions of men who had decided that mess was a form of violence. Her job was not to clean. It was to achieve a level of perfection that no human hand could sustain. It was to pass a test that was designed, at its core, to be failed. But Jojo did not fail tests. She had never, in her entire 29 years on this earth, failed a test that mattered. She moved through the floors systematically, methodically. She took notes. She memorized the placement of every object on every surface. She coiled every cable in the direction specified by the laminated diagrams mounted inside each cabinet door. She aligned pens parallel to desk edges with a ruler she found in the supply closet. When she reached the 68th floor at 2:42 in the morning, she was 12 minutes behind schedule. Her back ached in 3 specific places. Her feet had stopped sending pain signals and had moved into something beyond pain. The executive suite stopped her cold. It was the most beautiful room she had ever been inside. Floor-to-ceiling windows framing the Houston skyline, a dark wood desk the size of a small country. Art on the walls, real art, not prints, with the kind of weight that means something when you look at it. And that chair. She knew the moment she saw it that she shouldn't. The binder was explicit. Do not touch client furniture. Do not sit. Do not rest. But her body made the decision before her mind could object. She sat down, and the leather received her like something that had been waiting. She closed her eyes. Just 1 minute. She woke up to a ruler tapping her arm and a voice like winter. Now you understand how she got there, and now you understand why J.P. Min did not call security. Why he stood in the doorway and watched her sleep instead of waking her immediately. Why something in the rigid architecture of his control had cracked the moment he laid eyes on Jojo in his chair. Because J.P. Min had a secret that even his closest syndicate members did not know. He had not been able to touch another human being without experiencing a violent physical revulsion for 11 years. Not a handshake, not a shoulder pat, not a brief brush of skin against skin. The sensation was instant and unbearable, a crawling, contaminating wrongness that sent him straight to the nearest sink with surgical soap. He wore gloves at board meetings. He had a separate elevator. He had not dated anyone in over a decade. He had built an empire from behind a wall of glass and space and distance. And then Jojo grabbed his wrist. And the only thing he felt was electricity. Not revulsion, not contamination. Electricity. He spent the next 48 hours thinking about it, which was why, when she ran from his office, which she did immediately, petite, decisively, grabbing her cart and walking out before his security could escort her, J.P. Min did not stop her. He followed her instead. Jojo burst through the doors of Houston Methodist at 4:12 in the morning. She had barely caught her breath when the cluster of nurses and doctors around room 412 stopped her cold. Her mother had gone into cardiac arrest. We revived her, Dr. Reyes said quietly, but she's critical. We need to perform emergency surgery now, tonight, or we lose her. Then do it. Ms. Banks. His voice was careful, pained. The payment. We need the $140,000 before we can proceed with the procedure this complex. I'm sorry. Those are the hospital's requirements. Jojo stood in that hallway and felt the floor tilt under her feet. All her calculations, all her planning, all the hours and the bleach-raw hands and the 4-hour sleep nights, none of it added up to tonight. 2 men in dark suits appeared behind her. She felt them before she turned. Kang, J.P. Min's head of security, and another man she did not recognize. "Mr. Min requires your presence," Kang said. "My mother is dying." "I know." Kang's phone was already at his ear. He handed it to Dr. Reyes without a word. What happened in the next 90 seconds, Jojo would replay for months. J.P. Min's voice came through the phone, low, cold, precise. "Doctor, what is the total balance on Denise Banks's account? The full cost of surgery and recovery is approximately $300,000. Transfer it, all of it, full payment. I want her in surgery within the hour." The call ended. Kang made a second call. 30 seconds later, it was confirmed. The payment had cleared. Dr. Reyes stared at Jojo with an expression she had never seen on a doctor's face before. Complete bewilderment. "Your mother will be prepped in 10 minutes, he said, and J.P. Min's voice came through the phone one last time. Directed at Jojo, "You refused my offer. So the terms have changed. Your mother's bills are paid in full. You now owe me $380,000 at $30 an hour, working for me 12 hours a day, 6 days a week." A pause. "That will take approximately 2 years to pay off. You start tomorrow morning, 6 a.m. Don't be late." The line went dead. Jojo stood in that hallway and looked through the window as they wheeled her mother away. She had saved her mother's life. She had walked into a trap, and she could not tell yet which one had won. The address J.P. Min texted her was in River Oaks, the most expensive neighborhood in Houston, Texas. Old money, new power, the kind of zip code that children of wealthy parents bragged about and everyone else could only drive through. Jojo arrived at 5:52 a.m. and took 7 minutes standing outside just to regulate her breathing. She was not afraid. She was calculating. There is a profound difference. The penthouse was everything she expected and nothing she was prepared for. White and chrome and absolute silence. Art on the walls worth more than her neighborhood. Windows so clean they looked like the air had been replaced with glass. Every pillow aligned at an angle that could only be achieved with tools. "You're 8 minutes early." She spun. J.P. Min stood in a doorway in workout clothes, a towel around his neck, water bottle in hand. Yet he had clearly just finished training. His tattoos, the dragon climbing his neck, the syndicate markings across his collarbone and chest were fully visible and made something tighten in Jojo's throat that she absolutely refused to acknowledge. He looked good. Dangerously good. The kind of good that intelligent women walk directly away from. Jojo kept walking toward him. "Early shows initiative," she said. "Early is unpredictable. Unpredictable disrupts my schedule." His dark eyes swept over her, not with desire, but with the calculating precision of a man who assessed everything as either a resource or a risk. "The schedule is on the kitchen counter. Follow it exactly. I'll be in my office. Don't disturb me unless something is on fire." He disappeared. Jojo picked up the laminated schedule. It was 11 pages long. She read all 11 pages before she touched a single thing in the kitchen. Then she got to work. The omelet she made at 6:45 was not perfect. She had never made an omelet in her life. It broke apart in the pan into something that could charitably be called scrambled eggs with ambition. She plated it beautifully. Set it on the Eastern placemat exactly as specified. Coffee cup handle at 3 o'clock. Utensils exactly 1 inch from the plate edge. JP sat down at 7 without looking up from his tablet. He glanced at the food. His jaw tightened. "This omelet is scrambled. I'm aware. I requested an omelet." "You requested perfection from someone who's never made one," Jojo said calmly. "Tomorrow I'll watch tutorials. Today you get what skill I actually have." JP looked up at her. Something shifted in his eyes. Not anger, not amusement. Something older and more complicated than either. He picked up his fork and took a bite. "Adequate," he said finally. "The coffee is perfect. However you made it, repeat it exactly." Jojo left the room before he could see her jaw unclench. The first week moved like a current, fast, relentless, pulling her toward something she couldn't yet see. Jojo was good at her work, not because she was forced to be, but because excellence was the language she had spoken her entire life. Her mother had taught her that a woman who did everything perfectly had nothing to apologize for and nothing to explain. So Jojo learned the omelet. She memorized the book organization system. She anticipated his schedule shifts before he announced them. And she noticed things. She noticed that J.P. Min flexed his right hand constantly, specifically his wrist, the one she had grabbed like he was trying to recall a sensation. She noticed that every time she was working in a room, he found a reason to be in that room, not hovering, not watching, just present, pulling at her gravity like a moon. She noticed that he reached for her 3 separate times, arm extending, fingers almost at her shoulder or her back, and then withdrawing. Every time, as if he wanted to touch her and couldn't make himself do it. But there was something else she noticed, something that kept her awake on the bus ride home on the 7th night, something that she told herself meant nothing and could not stop turning over in her mind. Every single evening, just before she left, she would find a single item placed somewhere it hadn't been before. A glass of water on the counter closest to the door, or a car service card left on top of her supply bag, an envelope with cash for bus fare set beside her cleaning cart without a word or a note. J.P. Min never mentioned any of it, and Jojo never asked. But she kept every card, she folded every note, and she began to understand that this man communicated the things he could not say out loud through the only language he trusted. Silent acts of care wrapped in plausible deniability. The question she could not answer was whether that meant he was beginning to feel something, or whether he had already felt it long before she ever walked through his door. On day 9, she confronted him. "Why do you keep reaching for me and stopping?" JP had been pretending to inspect the refrigerator shelves for the past 12 minutes. He went very still. "I don't know what you mean." "Yes, you do. You've done it 6 times this week. You start to touch me and pull back." "What is that?" Silence. "Then, when you grabbed my wrist that night, did you feel anything?" Jojo blinked. She had not been expecting that. "What do you mean?" "When your skin touched mine, did you feel something unusual?" She thought about the electricity, the warmth that had shot up her arm and spread through her entire body. She had told herself it was adrenaline. She had been very convincing. "I don't know what you're describing," she said carefully. "Give me your hand." JP turned from the refrigerator and held his out toward her. "Palm up, steady." The gloves were off. "Touch my wrist, like you did that night. That's not appropriate. I know. Do it anyway." Jojo studied him, the control in his face, the thing barely held beneath it. She reached out and placed her fingers against his wrist. The electricity was instantaneous, warm, alive, more intense than before. Jojo pulled a breath and JP's eyes went wide and neither of them moved. "You feel it," he said. Barely a sound. "I feel it," she confirmed. "With every other person who has ever touched me," JP said quietly, "I feel contaminated. I feel like I need to strip the skin from my arm and start over. For 11 years. His eyes held hers. "With you I feel alive." Jojo pulled her hand back. Her heart was doing something complicated and she refused to give it permission. "Then we should figure out what that means," she said, without crossing any lines that can't be uncrossed. It was the smartest thing she could have said. And it was also the thing that made J.P. Min decide, in that kitchen at 2:15 in the afternoon, that this woman was unlike anyone he had ever encountered in his life. What neither of them knew in that moment was that someone else had already made a decision about Jojo, someone who had been watching this situation develop from a distance, someone with the power to destroy everything that was quietly, carefully beginning to grow between them. That person was closer than Jojo realized, and their next move was already in motion. On day 14, Jojo found the file. She wasn't snooping. She was reorganizing the document shelving system in JP's private study, a task he had assigned her the day before. She was sorting alphabetically, then by year, just as the system required. The file was mislabeled, tucked between quarterly financial reports from 2019 and 2020. She pulled it out to refile it. The letterhead read, Shinhua Holdings, Environmental Division, Remediation Report, Site 7, Houston Ship Channel. The contents made her go cold. The report documented a chemical leak from a Min-owned industrial property, solvents, carcinogens, groundwater contamination that had spread through a residential neighborhood in the 5th Ward. Jojo's mother had lived in the 5th Ward for 32 years. Denise Banks had been diagnosed with stage 4 cancer 18 months ago. The report was dated 4 years earlier, filed internally. Never disclosed, never reported to the EPA or the city or the residents. Jojo stood in JP Min's study holding this document and did not breathe for a full 20 seconds. She set it back exactly where she found it, refiled it under the mislabeled code, finished her shift with her face completely composed. And on the bus home, she sat with her hands folded in her lap and thought with the cold precision of a woman who had just discovered that the man paying for her mother's cancer treatment may have caused her mother's cancer in the first place. She did not confront him, not yet, because Jojo was not an impulsive woman. She was a strategic one, and she understood that you do not reveal your cards until you know exactly what game you are playing. She photographed the document on her next shift 3 days later, while JP was on a conference call. She sent the photos to an encrypted email address. She made a backup. And then she kept working. She kept working and she kept watching and she kept building a picture of this man that was becoming harder and harder to hate. And because the same man whose company had poisoned a neighborhood was also the man who left car service cards by her cleaning cart so she wouldn't have to take the bus home at midnight. And Jojo had lived long enough to know that people are never just one thing. The question was which thing JP Min was willing to become. 2 weeks later, the quarterly building inspection forced a revelation Jojo had not anticipated. The inspector arrived at 2:30 with a clipboard and calm professional energy. Jojo handled her smoothly, showing her through each room with the poise of someone who had always worked in spaces like this. When they reached the master bedroom, Jojo held her breath. Because 2 hours earlier, JP Min's bedroom had looked like a war had been fought inside it. Blankets twisted on the floor, nightstands cleared of their contents, curtains half torn from the rods, a broken glass, books scattered in patterns that suggested violence, not carelessness. JP had appeared in the doorway that morning with shame in his eyes, the first genuine emotion she had ever seen him wear without armor. "I had a nightmare," he said. "I woke up confused. I thought I was somewhere else." Jojo had not asked questions. She had simply started remaking the bed and said, "How long do we have?" They had worked side by side in absolute silence, and once, just once, they had both reached for the same pillow and their hands had met, and neither of them had pulled back immediately. They had stood there, electricity moving between them, eyes locked, something heavy and unspoken filling the space between their bodies. "Thank you," he had said, "for not making me feel broken. You're not broken," or Jojo had replied. "You're carrying something too heavy alone." The inspector passed every room without comment. After she left, Jojo found JP in his office sitting completely still in front of a dark computer screen. "Tell me what happened," she said. "The nightmare." He told her. And the story JP Min told her was not the story she expected. 11 years ago, JP Min was not yet the head of the Xinhua syndicate. He was 22 years old and reckless and hungry and in love with his younger brother, Seo Jun, the only person in his life who had ever looked at him without wanting something in return. They had grown up together in Koreatown in Dallas. Their father had been low-level syndicate. When he died, the leadership passed through the ranks and landed eventually on JP's uncle. A cold, brilliant man who saw in JP the same ruthlessness that had built the organization across 3 states. JP was brought in at 18. By 20, he ran 2 of the syndicate's territories in Texas. Seo Jun never wanted any part of it. He studied engineering. He wanted to build bridges. He had soft hands and big dreams and a laugh that sounded like it belonged in a different world than the one they'd been born into. At 22, JP made an error. A business agreement with a rival faction fell apart because JP had underestimated the other man's pride. The retaliation came not for JP. It came for the person they knew he could not lose. Seo Jun was killed on a Tuesday in November, coming home from the university library, 3 blocks from their apartment. JP had been standing in a boardroom 40 minutes away, signing a contract, when his phone rang. He ran 11 years ago, and he had been running ever since, not forward, but in tight, perfect, obsessive circles, controlling everything in reach because the one thing he had failed to control had cost him the only person he had ever truly loved. The OCD, the gloves, the distance from every human being on Earth. Not punishment exactly, more like a wall he had built so high and so thick that nothing could ever get close enough to destroy him again. Jojo sat in the chair across from his desk and listened to all of it without moving. When he finished, she stood up and walked around the desk and held out her hand. He looked at it. "Take it," she said. He placed his hand in hers. "You didn't fail your brother," Jojo said. Her voice was steady, certain. The voice of a woman who had spent years being the one everyone else leaned on, who had learned to speak truth the way other people spoke, comfort. You were 22 years old, running a criminal empire that should never have been yours to begin with. What happened to Seo Jun was a tragedy, but living in this glass cage is not honoring him. It is just slowly killing you. JP's eyes were bright with something he had not allowed himself in 11 years. "How do you do that?" he asked. "Do what? See exactly what a person is, the real thing, underneath all the performance." "Because I can't afford to be fooled," Jojo said simply. "I've never had a safety net. So I learned to read people very early." She released his hand, stepped back. "I want to keep working for you," she said, "but not as a debt repayment. I want to negotiate a real contract. Real pay, real terms. Take the debt and make it a proper employment agreement." JP stared at her. "Most people don't negotiate with me," he said. "Most people are afraid of you. I'm not afraid of you, JP. I know what you are." He went very still. Something moved behind his eyes. What am I? A man who built power to compensate for grief, and who still hasn't grieved properly. She picked up her supply bag. "Start therapy. That's my one non-negotiable." She walked out, and JP Min sat at his desk in the silence of his 68th floor and felt for the first time in 11 years something he could not immediately identify. It took him 4 hours to realize it was hope. But hope, as Jojo was about to discover, can be a dangerous thing to carry in a world that has already decided what you are worth. Because the call that came next would not just threaten what was growing between her and JP. It would threaten everything she had sacrificed to get here in the first place, and it would come from the last person she expected. The call came from Kesha at 11 o'clock on a Thursday night. "You need to know something," Kesha said. Her voice was wrong, too careful, too stripped of its usual warmth. Jojo set down her water. "Talk, when you got the Morrison job, the night I texted Nadia." Pause. "I made another call. Before I called Nadia, someone reached out to me a week earlier, said they were looking for someone who could get access to JP Min's floors." Jojo went cold. "Who?" "A woman. She called herself an investigator. She said she was building a case against the Xinhua syndicate. She wanted someone on the inside, someone Min wouldn't suspect." Kesha's voice broke slightly. "She told me it would help your mama, that if we cooperated, the legal fees for whatever your mama needed would be covered. Jojo, I didn't know it would go this far. I didn't know you'd get trapped into that contract, I swear. Who is she?" "Not a question." "She said her name was Agent Choi. Federal Task Force. They've been building a case against Min for 3 years. Jojo set the phone face down on the table. She sat in the silence of her tiny apartment and let the geometry of the situation arrange itself in her mind. Kesha had sold her access to JP Min's world, unknowingly, imperfectly, with good intentions wrapped around catastrophic naivete. Agent Choi, whoever she was, had been using Jojo as a pawn, and JP Min, the man who had paid for her mother's surgery, who had held her hand in his kitchen and felt electricity where he had always felt revulsion, who had wept silently in his study telling her about his brother, JP Min was sitting in the crosshairs of a federal investigation. Jojo picked the phone back up. "Don't contact Agent Choi again," she said. "Don't acknowledge this conversation to anyone. Go home. Lock your door. I love you, but I will handle this." She spent the next 6 hours thinking. By morning, she had a plan. "Are you still here? We are deep inside a story that is nowhere near done with you. If you have not subscribed yet, do it right now. Tap that bell so you don't miss a single chapter. Drop your city in the comments. We read every single one. And tell us right now, do you think Jojo should trust JP Min? Comment yes or no, and let's see where you stand." Jojo did not go to the federal agent. She went to JP. She walked into his office at 8:07 in the morning, 17 minutes past his established work start time, which she had never violated before, set a manila folder on his desk, and stood across from him with her hands at her sides. "Read it," she said. JP opened the folder. Inside was the photograph she had taken of the Xinhua Holdings environmental report, the one documenting the chemical leak, the one that had never been disclosed. He did not move for a long time. "Where did you get this?" he said. His voice was completely flat. "Your study." Misfiled. I found it reorganizing the shelves. She met his eyes directly. My mother lived in the 5th Ward for 32 years. She has stage 4 cancer. And according to that document, the groundwater in her neighborhood was contaminated by your company's unreported chemical discharge 4 years before her diagnosis. The silence in the office was absolute. Jojo, I'm not finished. Her voice did not shake. There is also a federal task force investigating the Xinhua syndicate. They have been attempting to use me as an unwitting intelligence source. Someone in my personal life was approached and fed information that was designed to put me in proximity to you. She tilted her head slightly. I am telling you this because I chose to, not because I have to. And what I need from you right now is the truth. JP closed the folder. He stood up from his desk, walked to the window. The Houston skyline spread before him, vast and indifferent. The leak happened, he said finally. It was a subsidiary site. When I inherited the company from my uncle 4 years ago, I discovered the remediation report buried in the files. I ordered an immediate private cleanup. I assigned my legal team to develop a community compensation plan. He turned from the window. I did not disclose it publicly because my attorneys advised against it, and because at that time I was also managing a federal audit on 2 other properties, and disclosure would have. He stopped, his jaw clenched. There is no good reason. There is only the reason. And the reason was that I was protecting the company over the people. He said it cleanly, without deflection. Jojo studied him. The compensation plan, she said. Was it real? It was real. It stalled in legal 18 months ago. No money has been paid. Then you're going to install it. Publicly. Full disclosure. Community Compensation Fund, Independent Environmental Monitoring. And you're going to start with a private donation to Houston Methodist's oncology ward, because whether or not that leak caused my mother's cancer, she deserves better than what she got. J.P. Min looked at her for a very long time. You're negotiating with evidence that could destroy me, he said. I'm not negotiating. I'm telling you who you have to be if this, she gestured between them, the electricity, the proximity, the thing neither of them had named yet, is going to be anything other than a disaster. And the federal task force, I will not give them anything. But I need you to be clean, JP. I need you to be working toward something real. Because I'm not going to love someone who is still half buried in something he hasn't earned his way out of. She had said love. She did not take it back. JP Min crossed the office in 4 steps. He stopped directly in front of her, close enough that she could feel the heat of him, close enough for the electricity to hum between them without contact. I've been trying to touch you since the first night, he said quietly. Not to possess you, to feel alive. You are the only thing in 11 years that has cut through all of this. He pressed his fist briefly against his sternum and made me feel like a person again. Then be a person, Jojo said. A better one than you've been. He reached up slowly, giving her every chance to pull back, and touched her face. One hand, fingers against her jaw. The electricity moved through both of them like a current finding ground. Neither of them pulled away. 3 weeks later, a woman appeared in the lobby of Min Tower and told the front desk she was there to see J.P. Min. She had not called ahead. She had not been expected. Her name was Ms. Kwan. She was 71 years old, and she walked like someone who had once survived something unsurvivable. J.P. met her in the lobby. His face, when he saw her, became something Jojo had never seen before. Completely open, completely young, completely devastated. Jojo, who had been waiting for him in the lobby after her shift, watched from 15 feet away as J.P. Min, the most controlled person she had ever met, embraced this woman the way only a child embraces someone they believed they had lost forever. The woman who had raised him after the gang war. The woman who had hidden him in her home in Dallas for 6 months while the syndicate reorganized after Seo Jun's death. Or the only person besides his brother whom J.P. had ever trusted completely. And behind her, 1 step back, half hidden by the lobby column, stood a young man, 20 years old, engineering student from the University of Texas at Austin. Soft hands, big eyes, the same eyes as J.P. Ms. Kwan spoke quietly to J.P. in Korean, then stepped aside. The young man stepped forward. I'm Seo, he said. Seo Min, your brother's son. The lobby went absolutely silent. J.P. could not speak. He put one hand against the nearest wall to steady himself. Seo Jun had a girlfriend when he died, Ms. Kwan said softly. She was pregnant. She was afraid of what the syndicate would do if they found out there was an heir. So she came to me. I raised the boy. I kept him safe. I kept him away until she looked at Jojo, until I saw what was changing in you. She was looking at JP, but she was talking about Jojo. Until I saw that you were becoming someone his father would have been proud of. JP Min stood in the marble lobby of his tower and looked at his nephew, Seo Jun's son, a 20-year-old engineer with his brother's eyes and his brother's hands, and Jojo watched something break open in him and release. 11 years of carrying the wrong weight. She crossed the lobby and stood beside him, not behind him, beside. He reached for her hand. No hesitation, no gloves. She took it. 1 year later, the Italian leather chair in JP Min's executive suite had a small brass plaque attached to the armrest. Jojo had put it there 3 weeks after they made things official. It read, "Ms. Pinky was here." JP pretended to be offended by it every single time he saw it, but Jojo pretended not to notice him smiling when he thought she wasn't watching. The Xinhua Holdings Environmental Fund had paid out $3.7 million to Fifth Ward residents in the past 8 months. The disclosure had been public, uncomfortable, and deeply necessary. JP had stood at a podium at Houston City Hall and spoken without notes for 22 minutes about what the company had done, about what it should have done, about what it was doing now. A regional paper called it one of the more remarkable acts of corporate accountability in recent Texas history. Jojo had sat in the third row and watched him with her arms folded and her chin level and something very close to pride moving through her chest. Her mother, Denise Banks, the woman who pressed her daughter's church clothes with a real iron, knock had been cleared at her 6-month follow-up. Cancer in full remission. She now lived in a 2-bedroom apartment with river views and called JP every Sunday to make sure he was eating enough vegetables. JP was in therapy. He hated every session. He never missed one. SEO, JP's nephew, the engineer, came to Houston every other weekend and ate too much of Jojo's cooking and argued with JP about football and slowly, imperfectly, built the kind of bond that grief had stolen from both of them and time was quietly returning. Kesha had dinner with Jojo every Wednesday. They never discussed Agent Choi again. Jojo suspected that the federal investigation had been quietly redirected, possibly because the target had begun cooperating with a different kind of accountability. She never confirmed it. She simply filed it underhandled. Oh, she was good at that. On the anniversary of the night she had fallen asleep in his chair, JP found her standing in the executive suite, looking out at the Houston skyline. He came to stand beside her. No distance, no gloves. His hand found hers in the dark, easy and certain as breathing. "I've been thinking," he said. "That's dangerous. I've been thinking that you could renegotiate your contract." Jojo turned to look at him. To what? To something that doesn't have an end date. He kept his eyes on the skyline, but his jaw was working the way it did when he was saying something that cost him something. "I know how you feel about control. I know you need the choice to be yours. So I'm not going to tell you what I want. I'm just going to tell you that my apartment is a home when you're in it, that my life makes sense when you're in it, that I'm a better man, not perfect, but better, and that the reason is you." He finally looked at her. "The rest is whatever you say it is." Jojo studied him, the long dark hair, the tattoos, the man beneath the empire, the grief beneath the control, the brother who survived because he had chosen, slowly and painstakingly, to stop punishing himself for the one he lost. "I have conditions," she said, his lips curved slightly. "Of course you do. You stay in therapy. Agreed. You finish the compensation fund distributions before end of year, already scheduled. SEO gets a proper room in the penthouse. He's sleeping on a pull-out couch, and that is embarrassing for everyone. The guest room is being renovated next month. And," she turned to face him fully, "you stop pretending the plaque bothers you. It's funny. It will always be funny." JP looked at the plaque, looked at her, and smiled. The real one, the rare one. The one that made him look like the 22-year-old boy he had been before the world took his brother. "Absolutely not," he said. "It's an eyesore." Jojo laughed, the kind of laugh that fills a room and refuses to apologize for it. He pulled her close, his arms around her, easy as breathing. No revulsion, no withdrawal. Just two people who had found each other in the wreckage of their separate griefs and decided, imperfectly, courageously, to build something instead. "You saved my life," he said quietly into her hair. "No," Jojo said. "You saved your own life. I just refused to let you convince yourself it wasn't worth saving." Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, Houston blazed and hummed. Below them, a city full of people carrying their own impossible weights, their own secret griefs, their own electricity they couldn't yet name. And on the 68th floor, in the room where it all began, two people who had walked into each other's lives through accident and desperation and the particular mercy of a bad night decided to stay. Not because they had to, because they chose to. Every day. Love is not about perfection. It is not about control. It is not about the moment everything falls apart. It is about what you choose to build in the silence after. It is about finding someone who makes you believe that healing is not just possible, but yours. And sometimes, just sometimes, the worst night of your life is the exact door you needed to walk through to reach everything waiting on the other side. If this story reached something in you, hit that like button right now. Drop your city in the comments. Maybe tell me which moment broke you the most. Was it the hospital, the file, the nephew, or the moment Jojo said she would not love someone still half buried? We see every comment. We read every city. You are not watching alone. And now, the most important question of all. Should there be a chapter 2? Because Jojo and JP Min's story is not finished. There are still people in the shadows. There are still debts the syndicate hasn't collected. And there is still a federal agent out there who has not given up. Comment chapter 2 if you need to know what happens next. Subscribe right now because when it drops, you do not want to be the person who missed it. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being here. This is your channel, your story, your community. Now tell me, what city are you watching from?